Okay, Science 9. Here we go. We start the Human Development and Reproduction unit. This is chapters, I think it's 1 through 3 in your SAS Science textbook. These are the notes that you have in front of you down here. These notes are for 1 and 2, page 4 to 75. And if you do need to find the notes or find any of the videos that accompany this material, then you can head to mrmathwell.com, where you should be able to find all of your resources. And here they are right here. More will be coming, obviously. Okay, so we just watched this video. This will be posted as well onto the website. But we watched this video, and this is a time-lapse video of a salamander growing from a single cell and then starting to divide. This is the first instigation of its division. And then well, I'll just mute it here, but so as this was going, you could see that there's something going on inside, and there's a kind of almost like a pinching off of the gelatin cytoplasm sort of thing in the cell. And this is obviously a very fast time lapse. I don't know how long this would take in total, but you can see how the cells divide quite a bit. Okay, so from one cell, the cells divide, and that's where we're going to kind of start our lesson and our notes. So if you have the notes out in front of you there, if you're following along your textbook, which I would advise, if you have room on your desk to have your textbook open as well, we're going to start chapter 1. Page 5 is kind of where we're starting with things. So you can get those textbooks out if you have them. So we'll start off with a little review from grade 8 that you may remember. Some of the things that you learned in grade 8 were all living things are composed of cells. Cells are the basic units of structure and function in living things, and all cells are produced from other cells. So what's amazing is, similar to that video we just watched, we all started off as one single cell. It's kind of amazing, and we're going to learn a little bit about that, about how we started off and how we grew and what sort of things happened in the meantime there. And it's amazing how the information to build you and me came from one single cell. It's absolutely amazing. And of course, we would be remiss here to not acknowledge that the Bible does tell us that we were fearfully and wonderfully made, and marvelously made as well. So the Bible says in Psalm 139:14, "I will praise you, Lord, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well." And, as we talk about cell division, the parts of the cell, and the process of human development and things like that, it is really amazing to think about all of the information, all of the design, all of the things that go into this. And we're going to learn more and more about this. And even me as a teacher preparing this stuff and working through this stuff on my own, it's actually quite amazing how much information and how much design goes into you and me. And some people think that we're just random accidents and random chance over billions of years kind of accidentally made you and me. The science is definitely, it's getting harder to believe that we came from nothing with no purpose and no design because of what we're learning in science. And so I'm excited to tell you about all the kind of cool things about our cells and about living organisms that, that may direct you to some kind of design hypothesis here. But it is hard to deny that information that was deposited into the first cell. So if we talk about, the very first cell that ever existed, because one of the things that you learned was that all cells come from other cells, so there must have been something happening at the very beginning, must have come from a pretty complex mind that's outside physical time and space, since matter has never created itself from nothing. So if we're talking about strictly scientific and not, a religious or a holistic sort of way of knowing worldview, if we strictly think about science, things come from other things. And so at the very beginning, before there was anything, where did the first thing come from? It's an important question to ask. So I have this little diagram up here. Now, these are parts of the cell, and some of these you may have never heard of before, but certainly some of them you have. On the left is an animal cell, and it's kind of cartoonish, right? It's not a detailed scientific diagram you might find in a high-level textbook. And this over here is a plant cell, but it kind of gives you some of the main parts. And some of these words you should recognize from previous science classes. So I'm going to get you to fill out as many of these things in the middle, in your blanks, in your notes, that are shared commonly with both animal and plant cells. There are some things that exist only in the plant cell, as we see on the side here, but there's a lot of things, including the mitochondria, the lysosome, endoplasmic reticulum, the cell membrane, the Golgi apparatus, peroxisomes, nucleus, cytosol, and cytoskeleton. So there are a lot of things that are common to both animal cells, like in you and me, and in plant cells. There's a lot of commonality, but they are very different as well. And obviously, we are quite different than plants. So you won't have to memorize all of these terms per se, but the nucleus is obviously going to be pretty important in our discussion here today. The nucleus, that's this part right here. So the main brain of the cells there. And I would say also that the cell membrane is also pretty important too, sort of what contains the cell. There's a cell wall in the plant cell that's a bit different. Animal cells sort of have a membrane. Plant cells have a cell wall. This is kind of an interesting difference that we'll talk a little bit about. Okay, so in page 3 of our notes, page 8 in the textbook, we're going to talk about the cell cycle. So as we saw in the video, cells divide and multiply to create organisms, okay? And so the cell cycle is described as the process by which the parent cell grows, duplicates itself, and divides to produce new daughter cells. So let me highlight the blanks here for you. So the parent cell grows, duplicates itself, and divides to create new daughter cells, is what they're called. Usually 2. So when a cell divides, it divides in half to make 2 cells. There are 3 major phases of the cell cycle. Phase 1 is called interphase. Interphase. Write that down. Interphase is the longest phase of the cell cycle, during which the cell performs its normal cell functions. I guess I don't have any blanks in this paragraph, right? The nucleus contains information for cellular activity, which is also called genetic information. So you might want to highlight a couple of these words. The nucleus contains the genetic information, and the interphase is sort of the phase of the cell life where it's performing most of its regular operations. It's just being a cell. It's making energy and moving around and growing and stuff like that. So we're going to focus the cell division kind of part. We're going to focus on other phases where it begins to replicate itself, but the interphase is sort of the longest phase of this cycle. So what is DNA? You've probably heard of DNA before. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. And this special structure contains our genetic information, including all of the instructions for how and when cells build living organisms. Now, DNA, this storage system is incredibly complex. It is unbelievable. We continue to learn more and more about how it works, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but we're mainly going to be talking about kind of where it is. DNA is packaged in a structure called a chromosome. Okay, a structure called a chromosome. The chromosomes are duplicated as part of the preparation, so duplicated is another word you need to filter, as part of the preparation for cell division, cellular division. So the organism can continue to grow and develop. So it's important to know that your cells don't grow like you grow. They don't get bigger. They divide and there becomes more and more of the cells. So instead of a cell growing and expanding and getting bigger, instead it divides. So the cells divide and they create more, like the video. Yeah, like the video we saw where the salamander kind of grows and gets bigger because the cells keep dividing. Now in DNA, again, we won't talk a lot about DNA. I'll save that for your upper level science and biology and things like that. But it's amazing how the DNA contains all the instructions from a single cell to build you. When it tells the cells when to kind of to stop doing things and start doing things. It tells them when to replicate and when to fix itself. It also generates tools that it can fix itself if something goes wrong. It identifies errors and eliminates them. it's an amazing information system that is just incredibly complex. It's really awesome. So we'll talk more about that kind of as we move through and a little bit more in biology. Okay, so here's a word that maybe you haven't heard before. It's called mitosis. Mitosis. Okay, so I first learned about this when I was young, and I have 3 sisters, and I remember one of my, and they're all younger than me, and I remember one of my sisters had this really heavy toy of hers, and I wasn't looking, but I was just standing minding my own business, and she dropped this heavy toy on my foot. And I yelled, "My toe, sis! You got my toe, sis. That's my toe, sis. Come on." Do you get it? Yeah. Yeah, okay, you get it? Okay, it's just not that funny. Okay, all right. That's fine. You can laugh if you want. Page 9 to 11. Okay, during this phase, the nucleus divides. Okay, so remember that nucleus we talked about is pretty important. The nucleus, kind of the brain, the center, the main brain of the cell. The nucleus actually divides. So the nuclei, that's the plural for nucleus, is nuclei. The nuclei that are produced are identical to each other. So it forms an exact copy of itself. So you should be writing in your notes, divide there is a blank. They are identical to each other. Okay, so mitosis has 4 phases. 4 phases. The first phase is called prophase. Prophase. The chromosomes which are produced during interphase condense and shorten. The membrane around the nucleus begins to dissolve and disappear. So the nucleus is now arranging itself, and it is beginning to split apart. Okay? That's prophase. So the chromosomes, they start to kind of pull together and condense and shorten. The membrane around the nucleus begins to dissolve. Metaphase. Okay, the doubled chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell. So we've duplicated some chromosomes, and they now are lining up in the middle of the cell. Metaphase. Middle of the cell. On the mitotic spindle. Okay, so these are kind of like little spindle fibers, little almost like rods or threads that hang on to the chromosomes. The membrane around the nucleus now is completely dissolved. The membrane around the nucleus is completely dissolved now. Okay, so this is when the chromosomes kind of gather and line up right in the middle of the cell. So the nucleus is right ready to divide here now. Okay, third phase is called anaphase. Prophase, metaphase, anaphase. Here, the chromosome strands separate and move towards the opposite ends of the cell, drawn along by the spindle fibers. So it's kind of like these chromosomes are pulled along to the edges of where the nucleus is. The 2 sets of chromosomes are identical with the exact same genetic information.
Probably need to remember this order.
Yep. Yeah, you'll need to remember this word. That's right. Telophase. Okay. Step 4, phase 4. Spindle fibers disappear, and a new nuclear envelope begins to form around each set of chromosomes, forming 2 nuclei. So the chromosomes are now in 2 separate nuclei, technically within the same cell, but they're now kind of 2 separate nuclei. So just to review these 4 phases, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Prophase, the chromosomes condense and the membrane around the nucleus begins to disappear or dissolve. Metaphase, they line up in the middle. Anaphase, then they're pulled to the opposite sides of the cell. And telophase, a new nuclear envelope surrounds both sets of chromosomes. Okay? And we're going to watch a video a little bit later that will kind of review when we review this, okay? So those are the 4 main phases of a process called mitosis, in which nuclei split and duplicate themselves, okay? So those 4 phases you'll have to remember. Any questions? All right, so phase 3, we've got interphase, and we've got mitosis. Now we've got something called cytokinesis. And kinetic, which is the root for this kinesis, kinetic, kina, means movement, okay? Cyto is referring to kind of the cytoplasm in the cell, okay? So cyto, think of the guts, the kind of the flesh of the cell, okay? And kinesis is the movement. So cells completely separate in this phase. So we've got the two nuclei starting to form, and now we need to make another cell. In animal cells, the membrane pinches in to divide the cell. And you saw that in that video. In plant cells, the cell wall is constructed within the cell. So it's kind of like built up, a wall built up right in the middle of the cell, which kind of like then cuts things off and makes a new one. After cytokinesis, mitosis begins again. Now we do have the interphase, right? We have interphase for a little while, and then mitosis, which is the main kind of point of this this part here, it begins again. So we have those phases again. Okay. Diploid and haploid cells, okay? So think about the di, and the di is going to be pretty important here. Di means two. In sexually reproducing species, the body cells contain two sets of chromosomes. So contain two sets of chromosomes. One set received from the male parent and one from the female parent. These cells are called diploid cells. And remember, di means two. Diploid, diploid, I think it's diploid is how you want to kind of say that. But you think about di means two. Cells that contain only one set of chromosome, as in these sex cells, okay, one set of information for the purpose of combining with another sex cell to merge genetic information in creating offspring with diversity, are called haploid cells. So we're going to spend a lot of time on this part here about these haploid cells coming together to create a new offspring that brings sort of information from the female parent and information from the male parent and merges them together. So you guys understand that in a family you guys would look a little bit like your mom or your dad, or a little bit of a mix of both. You'd have some genetic information from both your mom and your dad. Yeah, and a lot of times, well, we'll talk about this in chapter 3, but a lot of times some kids look a lot like one parent. Some kids, it's like, I can't really tell who they look like. They're kind of like a good mix of both or whatever. So that's how that works. So the diploid cells or the diploid cells have two sets of chromosomes, and the haploid cells only have one set of chromosomes, and they are looking for another haploid cell to merge this only half of this genetic information to merge to create an offspring. Okay, so remember the diploid, the di part of that word, means two sets of chromosomes in the cell. Haploid is one set of chromosomes in the cell. Okay, so you want to make sure you remember that. Di means two sets of chromosomes. Okay. All right, cell division and cancer. Okay, so in your textbook and in these videos we're going to watch here, we're going to learn a little bit about what cancer is. Obviously, cancer is a very real thing in our world today. It affects everybody. If it's not somebody that's if it's not you, it could be an immediate family member or a distant family member, someone that you know in your life, has gone through cancer. So what is cancer? Let's talk about cancer in light of cell division, which we're studying here right now. So our cells were designed to regulate, okay, and that means like govern or control, proper reproduction of cells, and to check for, and I put that in quotations, because checking for is a pretty complex thing, and it's quite amazing that our cells, which are inanimate really, like they don't have a personality, but they kind of check, they have a quality control built into them. So it's pretty cool, and I highlighted that just in quotes because there's a lot packed into this, which we'll unpack a little bit as we move through. But it checks for and eliminates cells that are mutations. Okay? So the cell is designed to pick out, things that are not quite right and to eliminate those cells that are either damaged or contain bad DNA or that are, not passing the test at certain stages. These cells would contain corrupted information like in the DNA, that would negatively affect the organism's development. Okay, now this is what our cells are designed to do. But there are exceptions. If our cells cannot detect the error or an error in its development, then some cells will reproduce uncontrollably. Or they will duplicate the corrupted information, making more corrupted cells. These cells interfere with the organism's development and could even kill the organism. All right, so when we talk about cancer, we talk about cells that reproduce uncontrollably or cells that are damaged or corrupted and they're not playing very nice with the other cells. They're stealing resources or they're actually ejecting things that are harmful to the tissue around them or lots of different things, but it comes down to the cells are corrupted, they don't know how to behave properly, and uncontrolled development is a characteristic of lots of cancers. So a collection of uncontrolled cancerous cells is called a tumor. So you'll see in a lot of literature T-U-M-O-R, you might also see it T-U-M-O-U-R, kind of the more British spelling. All right? So a very common characteristic of cancerous cells is that they divide uncontrollably and they obviously have corrupted information. And so if there's a whole bunch of cells that all of a sudden divide in a rapid succession, you might have a buildup of these cells kind of in one spot, and that's what a tumor is called. All right, what's the difference between benign and malignant tumors? Benign and malignant. A benign tumor will grow quickly and physically crowd the surrounding cells. Now, not all grow quickly, but most do. And they crowd the surrounding cells, impairing their function or causing pain. Benign tumors do not spread throughout the body and usually do not cause damage to the body. So it's kind of funny to think that someone could have a tumor, but it's not that big of a deal. Well, when there is a growth or a suspicion of some kind of lump or a tumor, you want to get that checked out right away, and the doctors can tell, and the scientists can tell whether this is a benign tumor that is one that is likely to spread throughout the body, or one that is a really kind of nasty kind of cancerous cell, or whether it's benign. And benign ones are usually are fairly contained. And they, even though they grow quickly, lots of times, if they're not detected right away, it's okay. I know lots of people that, have had a procedure to remove a benign tumor, and it sounds really scary because tumors are cancer, and cancer is something, that's pretty hard to deal with. But, a lot of times these people they have their procedure, it's removed, all the cancerous cells around there are removed, and generally they can carry on with their life, and it's not a immediate sort of deadly situation. So that's what a benign tumor is. It's one that's not likely to spread quickly and to really cause widespread damage. Yeah, so you can have little lumps in different parts, like of your wrist or ankles or things like that if you have some kind of damage. You can also have buildup of minerals and different things like that. It could be scar tissue. It could be a number of things. Not always is it kind of a cancerous thing, but it could be just how your body's trying to repair itself, that it doesn't quite repair things properly, and you get a buildup of a kind of harder material. So it could be some kind of cyst, a growth that's not necessarily a tumor, or you could have scar tissue, like I say. Like if you've had a serious injury, you might have a lump or pain inside your arm or elbow or wrist or ankle, and that could be, scar tissue, which is causing some pain.
That was like when I broke my...
Yeah, if you break your wrist or your arm or something like that, there could possibly be areas of pain that have kind of, tissues It's a little bit harder, and yeah. So malignant tumors, malignant, okay? So to malign, okay, this comes from the word to malign. If you malign someone, that means you're sort of treacherously plotting against them. So to malign someone is not good. You're doing something bad to them. So malignant tumors can quickly grow and invade and damage surrounding cells. Okay. So where do I have this? Yeah, malignant. You want to write malignant right here. Malignant tumors grow quickly and invade, the other term that's missing in your notes, and damage surrounding cells. Malignant tumors cells, or malignant tumor cells, can break away from the tumor and spread throughout the body through the bloodstream. So malignant tumors are a little more serious, and you can't always get all these cells with surgery. If you went in there to take out a tumor, it's malignant, chances are that's already spread to other parts of the body. So how much do you cut out, right? So there's other treatments for those kind of tumors that have spread. And a lot of times you can't really tell, when these cells are spreading and sort of infecting the rest of your body until they've already gone a little bit and you've experienced some pain, or something is really wrong with your head, lots of headaches, or you've got stomach issues or bowel issues, or things like that cause you to go to the doctor and say, hey, listen, something's wrong, I need you to give me a full checkout. And they test your blood and they do some x-rays and things like that, and they look for things that might indicate cancer or whatever. So sometimes it's not, you don't notice it right away. It would be like if you had a piece of sand in your shoe, you wouldn't probably notice that. But if if it was a larger rock and it was positioned in a certain way, you might not even notice that until you walked around for a little bit and they're like, oh, that shifted now. Now it's in a spot in my shoe where I can really feel it, and I've definitely got something in there. I gotta get that fixed. That's kind of the way it is. That's why you don't detect things right away. Although regular checkups and things like that, when you're over a certain age especially, become pretty wise that you should get checked out here. And so older people, older than you guys, would have these regular checks, and women especially, because there's certain types of cancers that that can be detected early that are a little more common. So cancer treatment is often long and difficult, but treatment of cancer is difficult because cancer cells and normal cells, are very similar. So that's part of the reason why cancer treatment is difficult, because if you try and do anything to eliminate the cancer cells, it's tough to detect which ones are the cancer cells. And when you do kind of target some cancer cells, you end up, eliminating some healthy cells as well. So cells are very similar, and eliminating cancer cells often also eliminates healthy cells. Surgery can remove benign tumors with much success, but malignant tumors need specialized treatment, as the cells often have spread to other parts of the body. We just talked about that. So chemotherapy, you've heard of chemotherapy probably before, if you've been touched by someone going through this battle. Chemotherapy is one treatment which uses drugs to target and kill cancerous cells. So medications, very, very strong medications that target and kill cancerous cells. Do you have one of these? There you go. There you go. These drugs often have serious side effects like fatigue or hair loss. So when you take some really strong medication, there's often side effects, right? You've heard of side effects. These are effects to your body that aren't intended, but that kind of happen just because of the nature of the medication. So fatigue means, lots of, very, very tired, your body is trying to combat this medicine, because this medicine is killing your body. It's killing your body. Now, the medicine is designed to try to only affect the cancer cells, but your body doesn't know that. Your body's thinking, well, what is happening? This is really bad. I need to fight against it. So your body fights so hard to try and battle this treatment, and so you get tired. Also, these drugs often target cells that duplicate very quickly. So when these drugs kind of sense that, and however way they do, they kill those cells. And what happens is your hair cells duplicate very quickly. That's why your hair grows pretty quickly. right? Compared to other parts of your body, right? Like, I mean, when you're growing, it takes you years and years and years to get to this size. Well, your hair, you got a haircut every month or whatever. So your hair cells divide really quickly. So the chemotherapy often targets hair cells because it thinks, oh, I've got some uncontrollably replicating cells. I need to get rid of them. And so that's why people going through chemotherapy often lose their hair, because the drugs target those cells by mistake. So that's, chemotherapy is very common, just because these drugs go throughout your body searching for these kind of cells, and can kind of, the idea is to kill the cells wherever they may be. Now, radiation therapy includes targeted radiation, so like almost like a laser beam, right? You're like zapping the cells, okay? You're kind of trying to find the cancer cells. If there's a clump of them, whatever, radiation kind of can zap them and kill them. Beams of radiation are very tiny and do an excellent job of targeting these cells. So these beams of radiation can be very, very tiny. Now, obviously, it's sort of like, you know, if you what's a good example? Well, if I drop you know, a few drops of grape juice in a sink full of water, right? That grape juice is eventually going to kind of get all throughout the water, right? So that's kind of like a chemotherapy, like it kind of goes around, treats everything. If I plunk a rock in the sink full of water, it's only going to actually physically sort of bump into the water molecules, you know, that are right underneath it, and it's going to go and it's going to settle at the bottom, and that rock is not going to touch everything, not going to touch all those water molecules, right? Eventually, maybe it will if you leave it in there long enough, but that's sort of the difference. It's like, you know, some grape juice in a sink of water will kind of influence all of the molecules. Dropping a rock in there probably won't touch all of the water molecules. It'll just go right down to the bottom, and especially if it's a tiny rock, you can kind of blow through a column of water molecules and it won't zap everything. So chemotherapy and radiation therapy are often used in combination to treat cancer. So just a bit of a summary here. Chemotherapy is the strong drugs that kill cells. Radiation therapy, beams of radiation that kill the cancer cells. And I think I missed a word there. Yeah, question?
Could it be genetic?
Can cancer be genetic? There may be some genetic tendencies that a person can have that can pass down to their offspring that would make them a little bit more susceptible to cancer. But if one of your parents has cancer, that does not mean that you're going to have cancer. But there could be some genetic some genetic pieces that would maybe make a person more susceptible. So does it run in a family? Not like hair color and skin color and, you know, height and, you know, those things, but sometimes, and again, the science is developing, and I'm not a biologist or a doctor, but from what I read, that you know some genetic information can leave a person a little bit more susceptible to getting different diseases and things like that. So it's not necessarily passed down, but sometimes there's some commonalities that are observed in families and things like that. So. All right, holistic view of cancer treatment. So it is important to note that not only are we trying to kill cancer cells, but we're also treating the patient, their well-being, and sometimes their faith. Family and friends and other supports are important in recovery. Supports may include prayer for healing and peace, quality time spent together, gifts, and things like that. So when we talk about this in science class, we're going to talk about, you know, the specific technical details of things. But certainly we have to keep in mind that people and families going through battling cancer need all sorts of supports, and your emotional well-being is very important, as well as the physical well-being. So it would be wise for us to remember that, to continue to uphold in prayer those that are going through these situations, and also to just be you know, a support emotionally as well. Okay, so textbook questions, please write these down. The questions that I'll get you to do for Chapter 1, that will be on page 15 for 1.1. And I'm going to get you to do number 1, 4, 5, 7, and 8, so you can work on those for this section.
Just do over the